buy a house in Ontario. What are the steps should I follow when it comes to buying? When to engage a mortgage advisor, home inspector, or a lawyer? What kind of paperwork is involved? What happens after the agreement is signed by both parties, buyer and the seller? So, my friend, either you are a real estate professional or a first time home buyer, get ready to gain some valuable insight. Buying a home is a dream of everyone. When it comes to buying, we have tons of questions. Therefore, I have crafted a comprehensive chart illustrating the entire buying process. This chart is helpful for the realtor and the first time home buyers. My name is Saf Kadwai, a broker of record with Max Realty Group. Okay, so this is the step-by-step home buying process. If you're buying house in Ontario, the first step is to meet buyer. Once you will meet the buyer, the most important step is to analyze needs. When we say analyze needs, mean understanding the requirements, what type of property they are looking at, uh, uh, which area, which neighborhood, do they have any preference related to any school, and what type of accommodation, how many bedrooms, how many washrooms. So I'll rather suggest you to prepare a list of the questions, these type of questions, which can help you understand the requirement of the buyer, because this will follow the whole process. So once you understood the buyer's requirement, the next step is to enter into a agency agreement. The agency agreement means the brokerage agreement. We call it a brokerage agreement. So I'm going to discuss only one option here, that's buyer representation agreement. There is one more option which is called customer service agreement, but that agreement is going to be discontinued with another option. So I'm just going to talk about buyer representation agreement. Buyer representation agreement is an agreement between the buyer and the brokerage through the agent, through which the buyer assign the brokerage to represent them in the whole buying process. It's very important for the realtor to make the buyer understand what type of agreement it is, what is the term of the agreement, and which area we are focusing. So once you are into the agreement, once the buyer and you have signed the buyer representation agreement, the next step is to get the mortgage pre-approval. Buyer will go to the bank or the mortgage broker to get the mortgage pre-approval. So there could be two options. One is the buyer will get the approval for the required amount, what they are looking at, or buyer may not get the approval for the amount which they were looking at based on their needs and the requirement analysis here. So in that case, probably you will have to sit down with the buyer and do this analysis again and follow this process to get the mortgage pre-approval. So once the buyer has the approval, the next step is to go to the property viewing. Property viewing is the most interesting part of this whole process. I really like it. So property for the property viewing, you'll start viewing properties to the buyer, and once the buyer will like any house, the next step would be to prepare the offer. When we say offer, so that's mean agreement. And what kind of agreement, what kind of document should you use with the offer? It all depends what type of property it is. Either it's a freehold property, it's a condominium, or it has a POTL element. It all depends. So I'll do a separate video for the type of documents with the offer. But for now, we'll just talk about the process, step-by-step process for the buyer to understand. So once you'll prepare the offer, you'll submit the offer to the listing agent, and then there can be a negotiation. Once after the negotiation, there could be two possibilities: either the offer is being accepted by both parties, or it is being declined. If the offer is declined, then you will again go back to this property viewing and follow this process again. And if the offer is accepted, the next step would be the deposit. The buyer will make the deposit into the listing brokerage trust account. You can get the deposit instructions from the listing agent. You'll get that, and after the deposit, the next step would be the home inspection. Home inspection, if you have a condition in the offer for the home inspection, which I always suggest, I always insist on this condition, then for the home inspection, either you can select or you can recommend, not select, sorry, you can recommend the home inspector to the buyer, or the buyer may choose any home inspector they would like to work of their choice, because this process, even this condition, is being added into the agreement for the benefit of the buyer, and it's really important actually. So we should not ignore this part. Home inspection, once a home inspection is done, so there could be two possibilities. One is that maybe but the buyer found a work in the house which buyer wants seller to fix, or in case if the seller is not willing to fix, then the buyer may ask to seller to compensate for that work, either in the price, so that the buyer can fix it later. So if that all negotiation is settled, then we'll go to the next step. If not, then the next step would be the mutual release. Then you will prepare a mutual release, and the mutual release will should be signed by the buyer and the seller and the both brokerages. Once the mutual release is signed, mutual release means both parties will mutually release each other from all obligation of this agreement which you have signed here. So once the mutual release is signed, the listing brokerage will prepare. Let me increase the size of the screen. The listing brokerage will prepare the refund of deposit for the buyer. The buyer will get the deposit in their name, and you will again go back to this property viewing process and follow this process again. If the buyer is satisfied with the home inspection, then the next process would be to go for the final mortgage approval, the mortgage process. Buyer will get the final mortgage approval from the, and yeah, from maybe from the same people from where they got the mortgage pre-approval, or they may choose to go to any other bank, or it all depends on them. Once they have final mortgage approval, they'll go to to the lawyer, and they'll submit all the paperwork to the lawyer that includes their IDs and the agreement which they have signed here, and the accepted copy of the agreement they'll submit, and then the lawyer will process their work at their end. So there are two type of lawyers in one transaction. One is the lawyer which is representing the buyer, and the second is the lawyer which is representing a seller. So now we are talking about buying process, so we'll talk about the buyer lawyer only here. The buyer lawyer will deal with the seller lawyer, will deal with the lender, will get the funds from the lender, lender mean the mortgage, and the process, and get and do the title search and process for the loan funding. At the loan funding, which is that is called the closing of the property as well. So there's one very important thing to note, that is what is the closing cost? Because I often hear this question, that what type of closing cost could be. So it all depends. So what type of property, what is the purchase price, where the property is, because there are three important elements which are part of the closing cost. One is the land transfer tax, the second one is the title insurance, and the third one is the lawyer fee and the expenses. Land transfer tax vary with the amount of the with the purchase price of the property, and where the property is as well. So once the lawyer has completed all the process, lawyer will transfer the funds to the seller, lawyer will get the title and the key, and the lawyer will hand over the key to the buyer. But before that, what the buyer has to do, buyer has to transfer all utilities into their name, just to make sure from the closing date, from the date they are moving in, from the date they are getting the key. There's one more process which is being followed these days very frequently in this market. That is the seller usually put the lockbox at the property, and instead of handing over the key with the old traditional process, they just give the lockbox code to the buyer lawyer, and the buyer lawyer give the lockbox to the buyer, and they'll just go and open the lockbox and get the key. So congratulations. So that's then the property is closed, and you got the new house. So that's the whole process of this home buying. And if so, this is step by step process where lawyer itself has its own process. If you need copy of this home buying process, please send me your email in the comments below. Or if you have any other question related to this home buying process, please feel free to ask me or send me your email with the question. I'll definitely respond you as soon as possible. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you.